I booked the farmhouse to get away from everything. After a burnout spiral at work and a breakup that had turned quietly bitter, I needed to disappear for a while. Somewhere remote, affordable, and quiet. Airbnb had just the thing. Charming 1800s countryside cottage, perfect for writers and thinkers. The photos showed weathered wooden floors, warm light through old windows, a rocking chair on a porch facing miles of woods, and a stone fireplace that practically begged for a rainy night and a bottle of wine. It was cheap, had over 50 glowing reviews, and was only 3 hours from the city. There was one oddity in the listing, though. Beneath the usual house rules, it said, "Please do not attempt to access the upstairs room. It is sealed for safety." I arrived around sunset. The road there was winding and narrow, surrounded by trees and fog so thick I kept checking the GPS to make sure I hadn't gone in circles. When I finally reached the house, it looked surreal, like something out of a memory I didn't realize I had. The porch creaked under my boots. The key was waiting in a tiny lockbox. The door swung open with that perfect slow groan you'd expect from a house that had seen generations come and go. Inside, the air smelled like old books and pine wood. There was a note on the kitchen counter in neat cursive. "Welcome. Wi-Fi password. Pines Guest 2020. Thermostat set to 70. There's coffee, firewood, and extra blankets in the hallway closet. Reminder, the upstairs room is not part of this rental. Please do not try to open it. Alice." I set my bags down, made coffee, lit a fire. But I kept glancing up the hallway stairs. The staircase was narrow and steep, the kind built before safety codes. It vanished into a shadowed corner of the ceiling. At the top was a single door. Old, wooden, worn around the edges. But the handle was modern. A thick silver padlock secured it shut. It was the only part of the house that didn't match. The first night was uneventful. I read, journaled, and tried to convince myself that I was at peace. But something felt off. Not scary, not dangerous. Just off. It was too quiet. I grew up in a small town. I know what country quiet sounds like. Birds, frogs, wind through trees. But here, there was nothing. And then around 1 a.m. I heard it. A soft rhythmic knocking. 3 knocks. Coming from upstairs. I sat frozen on the couch waiting. Nothing followed, just silence. I stayed awake until the sun rose. The next day I called the host. I kept it casual. "Hey, just wanted to make sure no one's staying upstairs or anything?" She replied quickly, too quickly. "Of course not, there's no one else in the house. The room is locked for your own safety. Please do not try to open it." My safety? Not our safety, not because it's being repaired. Just mine. That night the knocking came again. 3 knocks. Then soft shuffling, like someone dragging their feet just inches across wooden planks. And then something else. Whispers. Low, muffled, like someone trying to speak through a wall. I crept to the bottom of the stairs and looked up. I swear I saw light coming from under the door, flickering like candlelight, and something moved behind it. A shadow, crossing left to right. I turned around, walked into the bedroom and barricaded the door with a chair. I didn't sleep. On the 3rd day, I tried to leave. My car wouldn't start, battery dead, my phone showed no service. When I checked the Wi-Fi, it was offline. And when I stepped outside to get fresh air, I realized something terrifying. There were no tire tracks on the dirt road from when I arrived. No footprints either. It was like I'd never come in at all. That night I sat in the living room with every light on. I didn't even flinch when the knocking started. Didn't blink when the doorknob upstairs began to turn. I just sat there whispering to myself, "Don't go up, don't go up." And then the lock clicked open. I didn't see who or what opened it, but the door creaked open on its own. Inside was nothing but a chair, facing a mirror, and on the mirror was a note, taped at eye level. The guest upstairs checked out. "You're next." I ran. Sprinted into the night, no jacket, no phone, through the trees following the moonlight until I saw headlights. A delivery truck driver picked me up on the road at 4:30 a.m. Said I looked like I'd been running for hours. When I looked back toward the trees, the house was gone. No porch, no chimney, just mist. A few weeks later, I went looking for the listing. Nothing. No host named Alice. No rental records, no reviews. Just a faint Google Maps pin that said, "Property removed, under investigation." The east corridor of the 7th floor wasn't like the rest of the hotel. At first glance, it looked perfectly ordinary. A long, carpeted hallway, cream-colored wallpaper patterned with faint vines, brass sconces glowing softly every 10 feet. The kind of design that makes guests feel safe, predictable. But anyone who spent enough time there noticed the difference. The air felt heavy, like the oxygen was thinner. The lights seemed just a little dimmer, and the hall stretched too far. Housekeepers nicknamed it La Pasillo Sin Fin, the endless hall. Guests whispered other names: the stretch, the loop, the corridor that moves. No one agreed on what it was, but everyone agreed it was wrong. The first real incident was logged in 1983. A businessman named Peter Goldstein, in town for a conference, stayed in room 721. At 12:47 a.m., he called the front desk in a panic. "I can't find my room," he said. His voice shook. "I keep walking, but the doors won't. They won't change." Security was sent up immediately. They found him wandering halfway down the east corridor, drenched in sweat, clutching his briefcase like a lifeline. "I've been walking for 30 minutes, he gasped. "The numbers repeat. I saw 717 3 times. I should be at 721 by now, but it never comes." When they led him back, the walk took less than 2 minutes. But Peter's watch showed he had lost over half an hour. He checked out early the next morning, refusing to return. Similar reports trickled in over the years. A young couple claimed the hallway looped. They walked toward their room but kept ending up back at the elevator. A tourist swore he opened the door to his room, only to see himself already asleep in bed. He slammed it shut and ran. When staff checked, the room was empty. Housekeepers began refusing to work past the halfway point of the hall. Marta, a veteran maid, put it plainly. "Clocks don't work there," she whispered. "The hall eats time. You walk too far, you don't come back the same." Then came the security footage. A guard making rounds wore a body cam one night. The video started normally. He counted doors aloud as he passed them. 713, 715, 717. Then it happened again. 713, 715, 717. The camera shook as he cursed. He walked faster. By minute 15, he was running, panting, voice rising in panic. But the doors kept repeating. Finally, the video jolted. The guard stumbled out of the corridor, face pale, sweat pouring. His watch showed 4:05 a.m., but only 30 minutes of footage had passed. The archives had an even older entry, 1979, a missing child. A family had been staying on the 7th floor when their 6-year-old son vanished. His mother swore she saw him chasing a red rubber ball just ahead of them in the hall. They blinked, and he was gone. Search teams combed the building, every room, every stairwell, even the roof. The boy was never found. The official report called it a runaway, but the parents never accepted that. "The hallway took him," they cried. "It swallowed him whole." To this day, guests sometimes report seeing a red ball roll across the carpet of the east corridor. No child is ever seen following it. In 1992, a storm knocked out the power. Emergency lights bathed the hotel in dim red glow. A guest trapped outside his room decided to walk the corridor toward the stairwell. Later, he told staff the hall stretched longer and longer. The wallpaper peeled, carpet rotted, doors warped. The numbers reversed themselves. 709 became 917. 723 became 327. At the far end, he saw a figure, too tall, too thin, standing perfectly still, waiting. He ran. When he reached the stairs, only 5 minutes had passed, but his phone battery was drained to 0. One night, a new manager named Ellis decided to put an end to the ghost stories. "It's hysteria," he scoffed. He gathered 2 employees, strapped a pedometer to his ankle, and entered the corridor at midnight. At first, he walked confidently, calling out door numbers. His staff followed close behind, but halfway down they froze. "I can't move," one whispered. Their legs locked, rooted to the carpet. Ellis kept walking. His voice echoed, 719, 719, still 719. His tone shifted from irritation to panic. The staff struggled, finally breaking free and running after him. But when they turned the bend, Ellis was gone. The only thing left was his watch lying on the carpet. The pedometer read 3.17 miles exactly. His body was never recovered. The corridor was quietly closed off for renovations, but everyone in the hotel knew better. Guests still hear it. Some say when the elevators open, the 7th button lights up on its own. Others claim the doors part to reveal the east corridor, even though it shouldn't be accessible. They say if you step inside, you'll hear faint footsteps ahead. Sometimes a ball bouncing, sometimes a whisper calling your name. And the longer you walk, the more the hallway bends reality. Clocks stop, lights flicker, doors repeat. Until finally you realize you've been walking for hours, and you're still halfway down the hall. Every hotel has one room the staff avoids. At the Grand Marlowe, it was room 606. From the outside, it looked no different than the others. A brass number plate, beige wallpaper curling slightly at the corners, a red "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging from the knob. But that tag was the first clue something was wrong, because no one had ever seen it removed. For years, the same faded sign swung gently on the brass knob, as if the guest inside had only just hung it there. Staff joked about it at first. Guest 606 is catching up on beauty sleep. But over time, the laughter stopped. Because sometimes the guests in nearby rooms heard things. It always began the same way. A muffled sound in the dead of night. Breathing, shuffling, a cough. One woman in room 604 swore she heard someone crying through the wall. Low, steady sobs that grew into wails. She called the front desk, panicked, sure someone was in pain. Security checked. The door to 606 was locked, sealed, the "Do Not Disturb" sign swinging in the draft. Another guest, a businessman in 608, reported footsteps pacing back and forth for hours. Heavy, deliberate, stopping occasionally at the door before turning again. When he pressed his ear to the wall, the pacing stopped. And then came a knock from the other side. Housekeepers despised the room. Most refused to wheel their carts past it unless they had company. One night, Marta, the same maid who feared the endless hall, decided to be kind. She bent down and slid a folded towel under the door. It never touched the carpet. Something inside yanked it away so violently it scraped her knuckles raw. When she returned with security, the room was silent. The door still locked. The towel never reappeared. After that, Marta never went near 606 again. The hotel's records tell the real story. In 1974, a man checked into 606 under a false name. He stayed 3 nights, polite but quiet. On the 4th, housekeeping noticed the "Do Not Disturb" sign still hanging. Hours passed, then a full day. Finally, the manager forced entry. The man was in the armchair by the window, wrists slit, blood pooled around his shoes. On the nightstand lay a note, 4 words: "Do not disturb ever." The hotel painted the walls, replaced the carpet, and reopened the room. But the guests didn't last long. One man claimed he woke at 3 a.m. to find the Do Not Disturb tag hanging inside the room from the knob of the closet. Another swore the bathroom light switched on by itself, and in the mirror, he saw a man sitting in the chair behind him, watching silently. A young woman wrote in the guest book that she dreamed of drowning in her sleep. When she checked out early, staff found her pillow soaked, not with sweat, but water. By 1980, management gave up. The door was locked, the sign left hanging. But 606 refused to stay silent. Security guards doing rounds reported the TV blaring behind the locked door, static, loud enough to shake the knob. When they finally entered with a key, the room was spotless. The TV was unplugged. Guests checking in on the 6th floor swore they saw someone standing at the window of 606 when they arrived from the street below. A tall man in a suit, staring down at them. Yet the room had been empty for decades. The worst mistake came in 2002. A new clerk, unaware of the history, accidentally booked a honeymooning couple into 606. They returned to the desk within an hour, pale and trembling. "There's someone in the bathroom," the husband whispered. "We heard the shower running." I opened the door. Steam poured out, but the tub was empty. The wife pulled back her sleeve. Long, wet handprints streaked her arm as if someone had grabbed her. They were moved to another room. 606 was locked again. But when housekeeping checked the next morning, the bathroom mirror was fogged. Words traced into it with a finger. "We told you not to disturb." More stories followed. A delivery worker bringing new linens walked past 606 and swore the Do Not Disturb sign swung violently, as though tugged by invisible hands. A bellboy claimed he heard a phone ringing inside. When he pressed his ear to the door, he heard a man's voice whisper, "Please leave me alone." The door was opened hours later. The phone was dead. The most chilling account came from the cameras. At 2:43 a.m., an elevator opened onto the 6th floor. A guest stepped out and walked toward his room. As he passed 606, he slowed, stared at the door. The sign swung violently. The man leaned closer, hand stretching toward the knob. The feed glitched, static swallowing the screen. When the picture returned, the hallway was empty. The guest never returned to his room. Now 606 remains sealed. Staff avoid it. Guests whisper about it. And the Do Not Disturb sign still hangs, red fading to brown, letters peeling but still legible. Those who have seen it up close swear the fabric feels damp, as though it was just hung there. And the strangest part? When the cleaners rotate through the floor each week, they always count the tags, one on every door. But on the nights when 606 grows restless, they find an extra one hanging from their carts, as if the room is reminding them, "Do not disturb." The Grand Marlow Hotel was proud of its history. Unlike the sleek glass towers rising downtown, the Marlow clung to its past. Brass chandeliers hung from ceilings, velvet drapes framed tall windows, and bellhops still wore pressed uniforms with gold buttons. But the lobby centerpiece wasn't the chandelier or the grand staircase. It was the ledger. A massive leather-bound guest book sat open on a mahogany pedestal near the reception desk. Its cover was cracked, corners curled, pages yellowed with time. Guests no longer had to sign it. Everything was digital now, but management displayed it as a tradition, a nod to a more elegant age. Travelers often admired it. They'd flip through to marvel at names written in neat cursive, some more than a century old. Movie stars from the 1940s, diplomats from the 60s, businessmen and honeymooners, long forgotten. But the staff whispered another story, because sometimes the pages changed. It began quietly. A concierge once swore he saw the ledger turn a page by itself late at night. No breeze, no open window, just the faint rustle of paper. Then, new names started appearing. They weren't written with hotel pens. The ink was darker, blotched, sometimes faded as if decades old. The signatures were shaky, uneven, and often appeared overnight. The worst part? They matched people who had died in the hotel. Records proved it. In 1961, a traveling salesman collapsed from a heart attack in room 312. 30 years later, his name appeared at the bottom of a fresh page, slanted and spidery, written as though with a fountain pen. In 1979, a young woman leapt from the roof after a bitter divorce. In 2005, her name showed up too, scribbled in the margin, crooked as if written in haste. Each time staff checked, there was no tampering. The ledger had simply added the names. Guests began noticing. A newlywed couple flipped through the book in 2010. At first they giggled, tracing the elegant calligraphy of the past. But then the bride's face drained of color. At the bottom of the latest page in shaky ink was her husband's name. He hadn't written it. They checked out within the hour. Marta, the housekeeper who already feared the endless hall in 606, was the first to voice what everyone else suspected. The last name, she whispered, is always the next to die. She refused to go near the ledger again. But one man couldn't resist. David, a young night clerk, grew obsessed. He stayed late, comparing signatures to hotel archives, cross-checking death records. His notes filled whole binders. And the more he studied, the more terrified he became. The pattern was undeniable. A name would appear. Hours or days later, that person died on the property. A guest in 412, a bellhop crushed in the service elevator, a chef who slipped in the kitchen. Each had signed the ledger, though none had ever touched a pen. David tried to stop it. He taped the pages shut. But the names bled through the tape, faintly etched beneath it. He locked the book in the office safe. At 3:17 a.m., alarm sounded. Staff rushed to find the safe open, untouched. The ledger sprawled on the desk. A new name glistened in fresh ink. It was David's. He never made it home. His shift ended at dawn, but his uniform was later found neatly folded on a bench in the locker room. His name tag placed carefully on top. No one saw him again. The ledger stayed. Management avoided the subject, dismissing rumors as superstition, but the staff watched it closely, and the pages kept filling. A bellboy reported hearing the scratch of a pen in the lobby after hours. He hid behind the desk, heart hammering, watching the ledger. The pen sat still on its holder. But the book turned a page, slowly, deliberately. Then faint indentations carved themselves into the paper, letter by letter. By morning, another name gleamed on the page. Guests still wander by, curious, running their fingers over the looping cursive of strangers long dead. They rarely notice the last line. Staff hold their breath when they do. One elderly man stopped in 2018 smiling. "Would you look at that?" he chuckled. "That's my name." The clerk forced a laugh. Maybe a coincidence. The man patted the book fondly and headed upstairs. By morning, he was gone, found slumped peacefully in the chair of his suite as if asleep. The book is nearly full now. Its final pages are blotched, edges brittle. The last signature written there is shaky but legible. The name of a woman still living at the hotel, a permanent resident in room 212. Every morning, staff check the lobby, waiting for the inevitable, and some whisper that when her name is finally crossed out, the ledger won't stop. It will begin writing names that don't belong to anyone yet. Future guests, future deaths. Names like yours. Windows were supposed to be comforting. For most hotel guests, they framed the city skyline or gave a glimpse of neon signs glowing in the night. They reminded you of the world beyond the walls, that while you were locked away in a strange bed, life outside still went on. But at the Grand Marlowe, the 12th floor windows did something else. They looked back. The first complaint came from room 1204. A businessman stormed down to the front desk just after midnight, tie loosened, face pale with anger. "Your maintenance crew is climbing around out there," he hissed. "Spying on guests, disgusting." The clerk, startled, assured him it was impossible. The 12th floor had no balconies, no scaffolding, no ledges wide enough to stand on. Only sheer stone walls dropping 12 stories to the pavement below. But the man slammed his hand on the counter. I saw him. His face was right at the glass. He smiled at me. When the clerk gently offered to send security, the man shook his head violently. "I don't want anyone going back up there. I'm checking out." And he did, leaving his luggage behind. The next report came from a honeymooning couple in 1210. They woke at 3 a.m. to soft tapping on their window. At first, they assumed it was rain. But when they drew back the curtains, they froze. A pale face was pressed against the glass, eyes bulging, mouth stretched into a crooked grin. Fog bloomed on the window as it exhaled. The husband yanked the curtain shut. They huddled in bed, hearts pounding. When silence returned, he dared to look again. The face was gone, but a single handprint remained, smeared across the glass from the outside. Maintenance checked the next morning. The window was sealed, the outer surface spotless. But when the glass was touched from the inside, it was still warm. Housekeepers began refusing 12th floor shifts. Elena, a maid only a few months on the job, was vacuuming 1206 one afternoon when she heard faint scratching. She thought perhaps a tree branch, though there were no trees anywhere near that high. She turned toward the window and gasped. Across the condensation, words had appeared in shaky letters. "Let me in." She blinked, rubbed her eyes, looked again. The words were gone, but the glass bore faint streaks like wet fingers had dragged across it. Old records revealed the floor's secret. In 1938, the 12th floor had balconies, elegant wrought iron railings, advertised as the perfect place to sip cocktails while watching the city lights. But during a storm, one of those railings failed. A young man leaned against it and plummeted 12 stories. His body struck the cobblestones below, twisted horribly, eyes still wide open. Witnesses swore his gaze remained fixed on the balcony he'd fallen from. The hotel quietly removed the balconies, sealed the windows, and never spoke of it again. But some believe the man never left. Security footage seemed to confirm it. One night, cameras caught a guest entering room 1212 at 2:14 a.m. He set down his briefcase, closed the door. Moments later, the window lit with a strange glow, as though struck by a match. Then a shadow appeared in the pane. A head, then shoulders, pressed flat against the glass, only inches from where the guest was undressing. The man inside didn't notice. The figure lingered for minutes unmoving, then it crawled upward against gravity before sliding out of sight. No one was found outside. The most terrifying case happened in 2009. A teenage girl staying with her parents in 1213 insisted someone was knocking at her window night after night. Her parents brushed it off as dreams. But one evening, the mother woke to find her daughter standing at the glass, palm flat, whispering softly as if speaking to someone. The mother yanked her back, but when she looked, her blood ran cold. A face was there, pale, crooked teeth, eyes too wide, smiling. It didn't vanish when she screamed. It crawled upward, slow and deliberate, dragging itself across the outside of the 12th floor window as though the glass itself held it in place. The family checked out before dawn. Staff accounts piled up. A bellhop claimed he saw a figure clinging upside down outside room 1202. It moved like a spider before vanishing. Another time, condensation appeared on the inside of 1209's window, even though the air conditioning was off. When wiped, Handprints revealed themselves on the outside. One veteran maid whispered her conclusion. The windows aren't keeping something out. They're keeping something in. The window watcher became a legend. Guests booked the 12th floor less often, but when they did, some came back with wild stories. Faces at the glass, knocks at odd hours, breath fogging against panes that never opened. Management offered polite denials. Impossible, they said. The windows are sealed. But staff knew better. And then came the final straw. In 2017, a group of tourists dared each other to film a video in 1211. They left the lights on, set a phone on the dresser aimed at the window, and went to sleep. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the footage showed the curtain swaying though the air was still. A shadow pressed against the glass, distorted, grinning. Then a finger traced words in the condensation. Already inside. The guests fled the room screaming. When the phone was recovered, the footage ended there. The next morning, staff found fresh handprints, not just on the glass, but on the inside of the curtains themselves. Now the 12th floor is avoided. But some nights when the city is quiet, guests still wake to the faint sound of tapping. Some pull the curtains shut. Others, braver or more foolish, look. And when they do, they see it. A pale face, crooked smile, eyes too wide, pressed flat against the glass, waiting. And if you ever wake to find it staring at you, don't blink, don't move. Because the moment you look away, it might finally find a way inside. You've just crossed the boundary between reality and the unknown. If you felt the fear tonight, make sure to subscribe before you leave, because on this channel, every story is just the beginning. New nightmares arrive every few nights, each one darker than the last. Until then, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and your mind open. You are now part of the FearBound family.